Curtis Calhoun here with MMA News, and my next guest, you know him from his time in the UFC as a fighter and an analyst, now a top analyst with the PFL. Kenny Florian joins me today. How's it going, Kenny?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks again for the time. Really do appreciate it. First things first, man, it's that time of the year again for the PFL. This is my third season covering the PFL. Always the most exciting time with the playoffs right around the corner. Just kind of give me your thoughts on the fights coming up.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. We've already had some tremendous upsets. Jesus Pinedo beating Brendan Loughnane is the one that comes to mind the most as far as huge upsets. Brendan Loughnane, in my opinion, one of the best 145-pounders in the world. Losing to Jesus Pinedo in the first round was just massive. So really curious to see how the featherweight division pans out. That, of course, coming up in August. And so that's one of the divisions, I competed in. So I'm really curious about that one. The other one, of course, 155 pound division is the other one I competed in. So I'm really curious about that one. Olivier Aubin-Mercier is looking phenomenal so far. Just continues to pick apart his competition and just, now getting finishes and looking phenomenal. So he's going to be tough to beat. Of course, the 170 pound division. You have a bunch of different people that could win that division. We have both Magomed Umalatov, Magomed Karamov, and Sadibou Sy, who is in fantastic form right now, fighting. So that's kind of up for grabs. And, I can't ignore Carlos Leal. He's looking very tough as always as well on the 170-pound division. But, yeah, just a lot of exciting matchups, man, whether you're talking about the heavyweights, light heavyweights, the women's division with Larissa Pacheco. She's looking extremely dominant. She's going to be very difficult to unseat there. It looks like she's going to be a double champ in two different divisions now. So she's definitely leading the pack in my opinion. I'm excited to see how it all works out, man.
Especially at this point in the PFL season, I think what makes it so intriguing, right, is those stylistic matchups. Like, obviously, you take the four best fighters from each division, you get these stylistic matchups that are fascinating, right? So we're kind of, like one or two stylistic matchups that you kind of have your eyes on getting ready for the postseason.
Yeah, I think the one that comes to mind right now is Bubba Jenkins against Jesus Pinedo. Jesus Pinedo is a very well-rounded and dangerous fighter, a finisher through and through. He's going to walk forward, but sometimes the best recipe or best remedy, I should say, for that is a great takedown game. And Bubba Jenkins certainly has that. So I'm curious to see how Bubba Jenkins does against that high-pressure style and if he can do that and stay out of harm's way for 15 minutes. He's proven that he can. Definitely has the experience and skills now to be able to do that. But Jesus Pinedo has a lot of confidence and a lot of momentum coming into this one after that huge upset win over Brendan Loughnane. So that is very intriguing to me, for sure. Impa Kasanganay against Martin Hamlet is another one that stands out. I think Impa is a true dark horse in that division. Martin Hamlet is an absolute monster. His nickname is actually the Dark Horse, but I think Impa Kasanganay is a guy that can really take it all. He's been quietly kind of coming in here and doing extremely well, and it's just kind of crescendoing. Every time we see him, it seems like he's a little bit better, more comfortable, has a ton of skills, and could upset a lot of people heading into this one. Josh Silveira on the other side is looking fantastic as well. And then I think for Dennis Goltsov, he's always been the guy that has come in here with a lot of skill. And he's an A-class athlete as well, but sometimes either health has gotten the better of him or maybe his own mind has gotten the better of him. So curious to see if he can put it all together and have a fantastic season and take it all. But if he's capable of doing that, I truly think he could be one of the best heavyweights in the world, period. Maybe him and Henry Fajeda meeting in the finals could be very interesting. Two very dangerous offensive-minded fighters that could potentially meet down the line. So there's a lot of great fights. The two Magomeds going at it in the playoffs and coming up in August, going at it. Two teammates who have similar styles. So I could go on and on, but those are the ones that kind of stand out to me.
It was reported yesterday that Movlid Khaybulaev is out of the playoffs due to an injury. Obviously, super unfortunate for him, and obviously with what happened last year too. I want to get your thoughts on like the state of the featherweight playoffs specifically, like kind of just the parity that's in that division this year, and
Yes.
obviously with Movlid's injury.
Well, I certainly think it's one of the best divisions in the PFL. You know, when you're talking about talent, you know that division is kind of that sweet spot of having guys that are in that weight and size. You know, the majority of people are going to fall within that category. So I think that's why you have such competition from 170 pounds to 145, even 135 now is just ridiculous. But PFL doesn't have that right now. But generally speaking, those are the divisions that are really, really tough. So, yeah, I think we get that with the PFL's featherweight division. I saw that same report. I don't, unfortunately, have any inside information on whether that fight is happening or not. I haven't heard anything. As far as I'm concerned, there are no changes in this schedule as of right now. But it would be unfortunate to lose Movlid. And again, managing each and every camp for this PFL season and for the playoffs is so difficult. It is the other secret invisible opponent, right? Getting these camps right, staying injury free, all that stuff is so difficult. So hopefully Movlid is okay. But yeah, Movlid was supposed to be taken on. Let's see, in the 145-pound division. I think he's certainly been one of the favorites for sure. And I hope he's able to compete, man. I really do.
Another fighter that I really want to zero in on, and you mentioned him earlier, is Sadibou Sy. You know, it's like he's really taken that next step and really became a star in the PFL. Obviously, he's one of the longest tenured veterans in the PFL. He's been there, I think, since like 2018, 2019. I guess I want to get your thoughts, like his path in the PFL to stardom and, kind of how he looks in there now compared to, just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think I've been extremely impressed with Sadibou Sy in the PFL. His first season, he was a little bit raw in that he had a ton of potential. He was very dangerous, but he didn't have the grappling skills to give him the confidence or to, round out his game like he does now. And then even in like the middle part of his career in the PFL, he was putting it together. So he was a little hesitant and letting those weapons flow on the feet. Because he was working on his grappling. Now I think, after being a champion and knowing that he can do it, and also having the confidence in his wrestling, in his grappling on the ground, it shows that now he's willing to let his hands go. He's willing to throw wheel kicks until he gets the knockout. He has the ability, he has the experience, and the well-rounded game now to prove that he is one of the best welterweights in the world. So I am really curious to see how he does against not only Carlos Leal, but the two Magomeds, whoever may advance. So I think we're getting Sadibou Sy in his prime. I think he knows that, and I think we're going to see him at his best yet again.
Especially over the last 5 years, I just feel like there's been such an influx of young, hungry talent. I mean, across the sport in general, right? Like, obviously, the talent's getting better and it's getting younger too. So, what do you feel like, especially over like the last 5 years, has been the biggest reason for kind of the evolution and the surge of talent, just kind of across the sport?
Yeah, listen, I think obviously it's the knowledge that is available now. Not only do we have excellent coaches in this sport, but they have a bunch of experience as well. I mean, you can go any weekend, you're going to have, several MMA promotions, whether you're talking about regionally, nationally, internationally, going on. So, and then you have these larger camps. So you get the chance to train with amazing coaches, compete and train and spar with some of the best fighters in the world. There's so many different camps out there. And whether you're talking about Thailand, I mean, Thailand has been a destination for a lot of fighters. Now, that really wasn't the case before. Great place to go for Muay Thai, but it wasn't the MMA place to go to. Now that is the case. We have one of the best one of the best gyms in the world coming out of New Zealand, City Kickboxing. So again, we're seeing this evolution of the sport, people that are thinking about the sport in a lot of different ways. And that's the thing that is most intriguing to me as a martial artist, as a commentator, as an analyst. of watching that evolution, studying that evolution as a martial artist, and seeing what people are doing. And yeah, I guess we just have this great experiment going on right now. You know, the fight game is still evolving, is still getting better. And I think that's the key, is to continue with that evolution. And those fighters that are also studying the game themselves. You know, that's one thing I was really huge on and still am, even though I'm not competing. So I think you get that whole recipe, and that's why we're seeing the sport grow like it is.
One of the biggest storylines this week that I got to ask you about too is Michael Venom Page is a free agent now, restricted free agent. Obviously, you know, Bellator has the right to match any other offer from any other organization. But hypothetically, like if the PFL makes a run for him, which they could possibly do, where do you feel like a guy like that fits into the PFL welterweight division next year?
Oh, I think Michael Venom Page would be a welcome addition to any promotion. I think he's extremely exciting. He's very dangerous. There's a lot of different tools that he brings to the cage. You know, I think that he needs to get a little bit better as a grappler for sure. But I think he's a charismatic guy. He's an exciting guy to watch. And like I said, would be a welcome addition to any promotion. So excited to see where he ends up, man. I'm a fan of his and enjoy watching him fight.
And then obviously we have the reports right now that the PFL is reportedly in the mix, at least, and in discussions of potentially merging and purchasing Bellator. If that happens, hypothetically, what do you feel like a merger between Bellator and the PFL could look like? Like, have you thought about that at all in terms of how that could play out?
I have. You know, I don't know. I don't have any of the inside information on that, but I think that it would be a wonderful opportunity to increase the roster at a completely different scale. Now, how the PFL adapts from that, of getting a whole different roster, and again, I don't know exactly how that would be, whether they're absorbing everybody, if they get to pick and choose which contracts they take, similar to what the UFC did with Strikeforce, WEC, Pride, all that stuff. I don't know what that looks like, but it's certainly going to take some kind of evolution, right? And I think this is what makes the pay-per-view division of the PFL so interesting, is now we can get a lot of those high-level athletes. I mean, who wouldn't want to see someone like a Johnny Eblen, or, a lot of the great fighters over there in Bellator come over, and, I get, maybe it means the format changes, or maybe it means that, the guys that are up and coming become a part of the PFL tournament, and then they work themselves into the pay-per-view division. I don't know. I don't know how that looks like, but I'm excited. If you are, I think at this stage, from where the PFL is coming from, I think it's important that they establish themselves in a different way than, say, Bellator or the UFC, right? The UFC is such a monster. They have such a head start on what they've been doing with the sport, that to do exactly what they do would be a detriment, right? So the PFL having their tournament, I think, has boded well for them. But if they were to absorb the PFL, now you're talking about a much different roster, a larger roster with a tremendous amount of talent, where now maybe you can kind of go head to head with the UFC and try to match them on a different scale. So I'm curious to see how it pans out. One thing is for sure, there is so much potential for growth with the PFL, and bringing over someone like a Francis Ngannou and bringing over more talent is getting a lot of fighters who are over in the UFC kind of to scratch their head and go, wait a sec, there is more options. There are more options than just the UFC. I can do more. I can gain a lot of money in a shorter amount of time, potentially, by fighting over there than I would in the UFC. You can fight in the UFC for several years and never make $1 million. Whereas in the PFL, you could do it in 8 months. You can make $8 million, assuming everything goes well. So not easy at all. But there are some fantastic money-making opportunities outside of the UFC now. And I think that just makes the sport that much better and that much more competitive. It is adversity, it is competition that makes us all better. And it's an exciting time to be a mixed martial arts fan and to be a mixed martial arts professional fighter.
No doubt about it, man. A couple more questions for me. Once again, I really do appreciate the time. I know you got a lot of media going on this week, so I really do appreciate it, man.
No problem.
I want to ask you, like, in terms of the next steps the PFL needs to make to potentially rival the UFC? Like, what do you feel like the PFL needs to continue to do and add maybe to the PFL to potentially take that next step and really rival the UFC?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't pretend to be a CEO of a big company or anything like that. I'm just a former fighter and commentator and podcaster. But I would say from being around the sport, it takes time. I was lucky enough to be a part of the UFC in the early days or early-ish days where I saw the growth and I saw how it was done, right? And how it does take time. And I think that the PFL certainly has that potential. Now, at the end of the day, you need to be able to put on a lot of events and you need to have a lot of eyes on you. And I think a great way to do that is by getting that roster to a certain level where, not only, technically, excitement-wise, but having that vast number of fighters where you can put on a lot of events and you can put them in all over the world. So identifying that talent and having different talent from different parts of the world is huge to bring in those fans. And of course, just getting eyes on the sport, and that involves being a part of the media and getting people to watch it. And I think that the PFL is in good hands with all the business minds that are involved with it. And I think planning on that level is what's going to take it to a different level. So, I think another important element is to be willing to evolve and adapt to the needs of the fans and what they want. So I think, perhaps some changes are needed moving forward if they were to, let's say, absorb a Bellator roster or to merge. And I don't know what that looks like. Does it mean keeping Bellator around and being, over there and having that running simultaneously? I don't know, but I'm curious to see, again, how it all works out.
Last question for me, man. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit here. Obviously, a former opponent of yours, Jose Aldo, was inducted to the UFC Hall of Fame. I want to get your thoughts on that and his career and kind of, what he's meant to the sport over the years.
Jose Aldo is not only a legendary champion, but he was also one of those guys that elevated the sport in general. He took mixed martial arts to a different level with the way that he fought and the skills that he brought into the cage. And with that in mind, when I look back on my career, it's one of the great honors in my life to be able to compete against someone who was that good. I learned so much about competing against Jose Aldo and learned so much from what he did against me. So I just feel honored and blessed that was one of the things that I had an opportunity to do. When I got into the sport and when I really committed to myself, I wanted to fight against the best in the world. And I think it's easy to say that Jose Aldo is one of the greatest to ever do it. So I'm extremely happy for him. He has had a career that many would dream of. And coming from where he came from in Rio de Janeiro, and to see what he's accomplished from, the level that he's attained in the sport, the accolades that he's achieved in the sport, going undefeated for 10 years, and to have that financial stability to now being a businessman. And it's one of those feel-good stories. And Jose Aldo is one of those guys who did it in the right way. He had his moments against Conor McGregor. We saw some, right, frustrations and maybe some bad spots that Jose Aldo was in over the course of his career. But for the most part, he always did it with class. He always did it with grace. He was a quiet competitor. But when he got into the cage, he let it all out, man, and was one of the best fighters that I've ever seen compete, and one of the best fighters that I ever competed with, and probably the best fighter that I ever fought. So congratulations to him, his family. He gets an opportunity now to spend time with them and basically do whatever he wants. See him in boxing now. It's great. And Jose Aldo is an absolute legend, and I'm excited for him and his family.
Well, Kenny, it was great to meet you. Great to chat with you. It was an honor to pick your brain a little bit on the sport and talk the PFL playoffs. Obviously, a lot of great fights coming up. I'll actually be flying out to New York City for the New York City cards.
Awesome.
Next month. So hopefully I'll get to meet you in person. And thank you so much for the time, man. Really do appreciate it.
I hope so as well. Curtis, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.